Now, with this type of a project, I mean, this is an open source project, ClickHouse, but you are just a contributor. You're one of many contributors to the ClickHouse ecosystem and project. What are some of the challenges building a company around something that you have to contribute upstream and work upstream with?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, and I hope we'll have a chance to talk about this, is just running an open source, a business based on open source technology. The economics, you have to be very thoughtful about the business model because it's not proprietary software. You can't just, erect a wall and then charge people, create a walled garden, if you will, and then charge people top dollar to enter it. You have to be much more thoughtful about how you know, work with your community and then how you monetize them. So I think there's a couple of, so that's really the number one issue. And it doesn't really matter what open source software you're dealing with. But the second thing is you're absolutely right. We're dealing with a project which we are in fact not the main committers on the project. We are a major committer. We do a bunch of work particularly on, we do make commits to the database, and then we support a whole bunch of ecosystem stuff. Like our main thing that we support more than anything else is Kubernetes. So we make ClickHouse run cloud native. But we have to be, we sort of have to work with other people. We have to deal with the fact that the people, that the company that has the most committers, and for example, most of the core committers, is actually a competitor at the same time. So there's always kind of a tension between, hey, we want to put stuff in because we all want to make it better, but at the same time we're competing. So that balance is, after just having a business model, that balance is really the toughest thing for us. One of the things we really have to be thoughtful about.
So how did you go about evaluating, like you could pick so many different open source databases. There's so many options if you're taking the business model of, I'm going to take this project and operate it for customers. What was it like? Was there just so much expertise that you had there that was the pick, or like, how are you evaluating that?
Well, I actually did nothing. I had nothing to do with that. The way that I got involved with this was one of my best friends, whom I've known for about 20 years, called me up and said, "Hey, Robert, I know you like databases. I've got one I think you need to come look at." And at the time I was working at VMware, because it was after, and I was, sort of when you do when you do transaction with, with an acquirer, you tend to get locked up for a little while. So I was sort of like, yeah, I've got something else I got to do for a little while here. And he wouldn't go away. So eventually I came and looked at it. And the thing that was really impressive about it is it was extremely fast. That was thing number one. It also looked like it'd be good it would work well in the cloud. At that time, I was thinking in terms of VMware's cloud, but of course there's public clouds and Kubernetes. The real question is, like, what was it that my friend Alexander saw that that made him think this was a great database? Well, it was actually pretty simple. He was running analytics for a real-time an online ad company. They do real-time bidding, and they process something like 70 or 80 billion events a day because they're trying to figure out what's the best strategy for ad placement. And for that's an interesting problem, because it's not just, you don't just have to record the winning bids, you actually have to have all the bids, because then that allows you to figure out, hey, what bid, like if I won with a bid of $1, what was the next bid? Well, maybe it was 80 cents, so maybe I could have won with 81, So this is a huge data problem. The events are coming in at millions of events per second. You need to be able to respond to them very quickly. They couldn't do it with Vertica. It simply wouldn't scale. And it was really, and on top of that, it was really expensive. He found this new database that was ClickHouse that had just been open source. It was originally developed by Yandex, and sometimes called the Russian Google. And they open sourced it in 2016. He heard about it, jumped on it, used it, and it worked. And then he looked around and said, hey, but it was really raw. It was sort of like no documentation, or at best case docs in Russian, kind of hard you really had to understand how it worked. And he said, okay, I'm going to set up a company to do this. And then he ended up talking with some of the folks at Percona, to see if there was interest. And to make a long story short, that's how Altinity started. It was his experience of doing this successful migration and just seeing how fast and how cost efficient this database was.
Got it. So when when working with if you're commercializing a piece of open source that's not really, not owned by you, like you're contributing to it, but it's not something that you, have complete say over. What, in your case, what have been kind of the main challenges that have come with that, and how do you navigate them?
Actually, the biggest challenge on this was, so you need to get along with the core committers. That's a really important part. And I think there's kind of a natural tension between how much do you focus on your own business and how much do you give back to the community. And that's something that we, try to do as thoughtfully as possible. The interesting thing is, though, that you can give back to communities in a bunch of different ways. In our case, probably what we did more than anything else was we worked to popularize ClickHouse as much as possible. So I do videos, for example, and I constantly have people coming up to me at conferences, and they kind of meet me. They kind of shake my hand and they greet me as if they know who I am, which is kind of terrifying because I forget names really fast, and I'm thinking, oh, is this somebody that I should know? And so anyway, we did a lot of work along those lines. We wrote blog articles, we went to conferences, we spawned meetups to try and make ClickHouse more popular. Beyond that, we contributed to the code. We did things like do Grafana. We maintain the Grafana community Grafana plugin. We have a Kubernetes operator, so on and so forth. These are all things that we did to try and help make help make ClickHouse easier to use and more popular. Because when a new database comes out in Silicon Valley, for example, people will not give you the time of day. There's a new database every week. So you have to really work to market it and and ensure people get interested in it. We were helped by the fact that some pretty famous people like Cloudflare adopted it, and then they wrote about how great it was for their application. And that was one of the things that really we kind of keyed off that to make our contribution to help make it more popular.